This video is brought to you by my Discord and my Blue Sky. Check the links down in the description below. Hey, what's going on, you guys, and welcome back to That's a Wrap. My name is the Raptor, and today we will be reviewing the newest episode of Deathbattle, Dante versus the guy from Tekken 8. But before we get started, let me introduce who we have on the panel today. First up is one of our lovely mods. He's been on the show a couple times before. Red Archus. How are you doing, Red?
I'm doing quite well. Thank you for asking.
Glad to hear it, yeah. Also on the podcast, and also been on here a couple times before, we have your Nemesis. How are you doing, your Nemesis?
Lovely.
Nemesis, stop aura farming.
And last but not least, we have Ethan. How are you doing, Ethan?
I'm doing well. You guys might know me as Evachuber, but you guys can call me Ethan.
Yeah, today I'm calling you Ethan, the entire time.
Well, yeah, I told you to.
Yeah, no worries. All right, and yeah, so this is the podcast that we do on the channel. We've done this for like every single death battle this year and a few from last year as well. Basically, ever since the Kickstarter started, like ever since all the Kickstarter matchups happened. So if you want to go back and watch any opinions on those, that we have a whole playlist of podcasts. But today we're talking about the newest episode, Dante versus Clive. Definitely a few unique things to say about this one, I think. I think the best place to start is just how we thought about the matchup as it was announced. Like, did you like the matchup beforehand? Did you even know about the matchup beforehand? Were you excited for it? All of that stuff. So, Red, we'll start with you. First impressions of the matchup. What were you thinking when it was announced?
I didn't have any particularly strong feelings in the matchup itself, partially because I wasn't 100% aware of Final Fantasy 16.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I was slightly set at the reveal, partially because I was kind of a Dante versus Alucard fan. But I wasn't going to turn down a Final Fantasy episode that wasn't 7, especially not when my second favorite matchup of all time is Final Fantasy. So sit back and see how things went.
Yeah, for sure. I remember when it got announced, yeah, it's like seeing a Final Fantasy character that wasn't 7. It's like, oh yeah, that's really cool. Like, they haven't done that yet, and there are definitely other matchups with Final Fantasy characters that are not from 7 that's like I would definitely really like to see that. So to have that precedent set now is definitely a really good feeling to have.
Frankly, when I saw this, I basically yelled. It was... It's like finally getting something that I never knew that I actually wanted, because it's nice seeing two characters that I know that I really, really like, because big fan of Final Fantasy, big fan of Devil May Cry. So seeing this just made my day, and I was super excited. I was on board day one.
What was it, the kind of thing where like you knew about the matchup itself beforehand, or just you saw that it was Devil May Cry and Final Fantasy, and then you're like, oh yeah, I'm sold?
I was aware of the matchup to some extent. I've heard about it because it is considered Clive's best MU, in fact.
I mean, that makes sense to me, yeah.
To me, it just never felt like something that would ever happen.
Yeah, no, I've been there definitely before, where it's like really like one good example is Blade versus Buffy, where it's like that's a matchup I knew I would want until like the end of time, but I didn't actually think like, oh yeah, like that's just an inevitability. I never thought that for a second, so to actually see it get announced, it's like, holy shit. But I'll absolutely take it. Yeah, I think we've all been there a few times, so that's awesome when you get that feeling.
It was like months before the episode got announced. I don't remember the exact waiting period, but we were ranking the pitch matchups, and when we got to, I think it was Clive versus Aaron, I was talking about other Clive matchups, and I explicitly said, I'm not gonna lie, Dante versus Clive sounds fire.
Okay.
So I was really ecstatic. I remember like being really happy that it was a good matchup that we got for Dante's run back. Not to mention, it was the first, as you said earlier, it's the first Final Fantasy episode that doesn't involve a character from Final Fantasy 7. So I think that was also really interesting. Also, it did give me a reason to pick up to get back on Devil May Cry 5, because I had it on my Steam library.
Right.
So I played that, and it ended up being one of my favorite games. I really enjoyed it, and I think Dante is one of my favorite boss battles in the Virgil story.
I knew about, Aaron versus Clive just from the Death Battle cast and the pitch matchup. I wasn't really a huge fan of that one either. But I'll be honest, I didn't really know of this matchup's existence, at least not very much. Maybe I'd heard about it a few times before, but it wasn't something I was constantly thinking about. It was cool to see Dante come back, and I at least knew who Clive was, which I think is better than the average community member based on the conversations I was seeing. That a lot of people just didn't seem to know who he was. But yeah, like I get, seeing a Final Fantasy character, especially like as recent as 16, was kind of crazy. But Obviously, no complaints with that. And I didn't really think Dante was gonna return for a while. I wasn't personally a huge fan of most of the matchups that I was seeing for him, and I didn't really think there was any that Deathbattle was gonna be rushing to do. But yeah, in hindsight, this was definitely a really good pick for him. And this was definitely one of the fights I thought that would have been perfect for, you know, Torrian and all the other animators that were working on this. It wasn't the one I was expecting.
Especially Torrian.
Yeah, especially Torrian. I wasn't the one that I was expecting. I know a lot of people were throwing out Shulk versus Lightning because Torrian really likes that idea. And also Spy versus Agent 47 as far as just like the 3D. I know that one was also being thrown around. But I got no complaints that this is the one that we got from him. And I'm honestly really sad that he just might not be able to come back for matchups that are like this, because I think that matchups like this, you know, characters like this, he just handles them really well. And it's sad knowing, you know, that he just might not be able to, you know, come back for all of them. I do miss, you know, Torrian's time, like full time on Deathbattle.
We all do.
Yeah.
For sure.
And with all that said, I think we can move on to the actual animation of this episode. Probably the thing that a lot of people want to talk about the most, frankly, and I don't really blame them. So, Nemesis, we'll start with you for this one.
I thought it was just everything that I could have possibly asked for with this fight. It blew me away. Just with the amount of shit that was happening, which made for a really fun scenes that looked nice, flowed nice, looked nice.
Yeah, for sure. I remember that.
Feel nice.
Yeah, it feels so good. I remember from, you know, Torrian's earlier death battles, that one thing I knew that he was really, really good at was like fitting as much stuff into the animation as reasonably possible. Like it wouldn't always be like every single thing the character has, but, you know, he would always come up with like really cool ideas to implement, you know, the character's powers and how they could bounce off of each other. And that is definitely present here, just with how much stuff he was able to put in here. Not even just based on the individual powers, but also like just the overall spectacle, the escalation of everything. Because there's a lot of like set movements, like we move from like one set piece to another, and that feels very in line with what Torrian's strengths were when he was animating for older Deathbattle.
And there's a lot of references crammed in here.
Yeah, any particular favorites?
I could go on. My personal favorite is when Dante and Clive are clashing together at the bottom of the gem pit. And there's gems raining down.
Yeah.
You see them slash at them in close-ups. That's a reference to DMC Free's opening.
Yep.
Where Virgil and Dante were slashing at the rain.
Yeah. I definitely picked up on that,
really
yeah.
Cool. And it makes it even cooler because of the fact that Clive is using a Zenitsuken, basically Virgil's weapon.
Yeah, the space cutting sword, yeah. His Yamato, if you will.
Yamato, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It was so good, oh my god. I remember one thing I specifically liked was the implementation of Dr. Faust, the hat weapon he uses dance moves with.
Mm-hmm.
That weapon was so funny to see on screen, especially when like Clive got that claw thing and he and when Dante did the final dance move before getting grabbed and losing Dr. Faust. Like, when I first saw that, I burst into laughter. Yeah. That scene was so funny.
Way to ruin the show, Clive. Come on now.
Yeah. There was also another funny thing. It was when Dante uses Cavalier for the first time and begins riding down the crystal ramp.
Yep.
And then you just see Clive looking up for his British ass going, well, what the hell is that? Because given this time period, he doesn't know what a fuck a motorcycle is.
Right.
He doesn't know vehicles. It was honestly a really funny episode. Although, I must say, but it has to be a 0 out of 10, because if I know one thing from Devil May Cry, Dante didn't use Royal Guard enough. I'm just saying, guys.
I mean, yeah.
Him Royal Guarding the sword was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he Royal Guarded a few times, but we all know he would have spammed the shit out of that.
Well, maybe you would playing as him. Who knows?
I'm not gonna lie, Rapp. So when I played Devil May Cry 5, I really fucking used Royal Guard.
Yeah, no, I can't really blame you for that, honestly.
Yeah, they definitely leaned a lot more into Dante's flamboyant side during the start of the episode, but then they looped into his more serious side by the time they activated Devil Jerk.
Absolutely.
Which led to a really good space scene. That scene in space was so hype. Oh my god.
That literally looks like a cinematic to me. Like, it's crazy how clean that looks. Just everything from like, yeah, from the space scene onward, it's crazy like how true to the series that entire sequence looks. Yeah.
It's like Torrian never left us.
It's like you're as beautiful as the day I lost you, basically.
Exactly. You're as beautiful as the day I lost you. We got the dynamic action. We got the back and forth. We got the stoic facial expressions. We got the 30 billion backflips. We got everything. A lot of Dante matchups, not all of them, but a good chunk of them, work their best when there is a straight match to Dante's silliness, which is reasons why I kind of like Dante versus Alucard. But like Clive filled that hole damn good
For sure.
on his own. But to his credit, he adapted to the silliness a lot sooner than most people would.
Yeah, he's like, okay, this is what we're doing. Yeah.
We're doing this now, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, even the way they referenced their brothers was like so different, because with Dante, it was just a nonchalant, oh hey, Virgil would hate this.
Mhm.
But like with Clive, with Clive was like, I need your strength once more, Joshua. And it like they really showed off the personalities of their journeys and time period really well. And obviously, like, that climax was pretty good. With how like it did a good job in building up the suspense with like Dante coughing blood first, and then he was still able to briefly overpower Clive. The pacing was like really good. You know, like it's easy to lose some pacing in the sauce if you're trying to throw as much as possible, because Dante has a really big arsenal at his disposal.
Yeah.
Even though he doesn't use a lot of it anymore, either because he's a goofball or because he sold some of them off because broke. I like that they didn't sacrifice Clive's cool points for the sake of just having more Dante silliness, because it's easy to lose yourself in the Wacky Wahoo Pizza Man shenanigans to forget that Dante was depressed for a good chunk of his life.
Yeah. As far as me, yeah, like, I think this is such an amazing Torrian fight. Like, as far as just, like, quality of animation itself, this might just be the best one he's done for Deathbattle. Like, it is crazy how much he amped it up for this one. Again, like I said, literally looks like a cinematic at various points in the animation. It's crazy. I thought the character models looked great. I thought, yeah, like Red was saying, like, the representation for both of the characters, like, as far as the voice acting, but also the personalities and showing the differences between them. Like, I think that was all handled really well in the animation. Pacing was great. Yeah, like, we start with, like, their more basic, more versatile abilities, and then kind of, as they power up, you know, we see less of that versatility, but then we see some really cool, you know, space battling, you know, choreography with that as well. So, you know, they made sure to fit as much in there as possible, which again, Torrian I think is really, really good at doing. The fake out I thought was actually pretty decent, at least for Deathbattle standards. I do kind of wish that the portion of the fight after they had powered down maybe lasted a little bit longer, but even still, I think it was handled pretty well. The colors as well in this, I thought were so cool, and like the contrast of colors from set piece to set piece, decent sound design. What did people think of the track, The Devil Inside? Did people enjoy the track?
It's good.
Also plain.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well. I definitely want to listen to it a bit more, but because I have only listened to it a few times on its own so far, but like, yeah, that's a pretty hard track for sure.
Yeah, it's a good mix of Devil May Cry music and Final Fantasy 16 soundtrack. I would almost say it's a pretty decent mix thing, which surprised me.
Right. Well, that's about as much as you can want, right?
Yeah, like, I think it's quite rare for a track to simultaneously make me go, this probably sounds better in the fight than by itself. And then I just go, oh my god, I was wrong.
Well, sometimes you also lose some of the track because, like, you know, sometimes the sound effects kind of overpower the track. You don't really get to hear all the little details in it until you listen to it on its own. And yeah, sometimes definitely the track sounds better paired with the animation, but sometimes you might not absorb everything from the track just by watching the animation. One of the things I missed from the Torrian animations was, like, just how fast his fights can feel sometimes, and that is definitely on full display here. The fight feels so fast and fluid. You know, the camera work as well, like everything, you know, the framing feels like everything is where it needs to be. You're looking exactly at what you're supposed to look at. All that works well. And yes, maybe there were some parts where it looked a little stiff, but like, I'm not seeing too many people saying like, oh, you know, all this jank, like sometimes I hear with other 3D battles. Like, I definitely think Torrian has leveled up. I was really happy to see it with a fight that really felt like it was appropriate for him to do. But there's also more to Deathbattle than that. We can also talk about the analyses. So, Ethan, we'll start with you for this one. What did you think about the general analyses? Not necessarily the outcome, we'll get to that a little later, but as far as like how everything was structured, the writing, the editing, how the characters were looked at, what did you think?
Okay, I'm going to start with Dante's because Dante's the character I'm more familiar with.
Sure.
I thought his analysis was pretty good. I didn't have the best expectations because when I saw the preview of the analysis, it wasn't looking the best, especially since it didn't include the Lucifer text from the novel in the preview where he got the Lucifer weapon from, because if a random person was watching that episode, they would think that the monster that you saw in Devil May Cry 4 was Lucifer, but no, that's Ifrit, a completely different monster. Well, I'm glad they sorted that out in the final cut. The analysis was pretty good. It goes over the weapons well, it also goes over his story. And I did like the ending of the analysis, where it goes over like how Dante is full of smiles, he's always cracking jokes. Behind all that is a guy who struggles accepting the fact that he's both half human, half devil. So the humans hate him because he's a devil, the devils hate him because he accepted his humanity. A really hard burden for him to act, which is thankfully going away now, since now he has a family because of Nero.
Yeah.
And I also want Nero on Deathbattle, please.
Yes.
Okay, Clive's analysis was also pretty good, even if I haven't played Final Fantasy 16 yet. I enjoyed hearing about what Clive went through, along with his mental torment of the fact that he couldn't control Ifrit, and a lot of people suffered because of it, before he got new friends in the form of his party members, and he just went on from there, and even beat his inner demons, literally. Yeah, that's all I really know about Clive. I'm not really... I haven't played Final Fantasy 16, but from what I know, his analysis was pretty good. I enjoyed the analyses a lot.
Dante's analysis was always going to need like a revisit, considering that his last episode was like 9 years ago. I wish they went on a bit on his previous weapons and powers, although I understand why they focused on 5 and some of his styles. 3. I like that they acknowledge his depression between DMC 1, 2, and 4, because that's something that a lot of people talk about, which, to be fair, that was because it was most of the focus on it was in the anime, but like Dante was not okay after he thought he killed Virgil. Like, he was just going through it.
Yeah.
Isn't that why Dante is how he is in Devil May Cry 2, according to DMC5?
I think. Although, to be fair, not a lot of people like DMC2, so I don't really...
Yeah, from what I remember, they made Dante's brooding and his edgy personality into as a result of him thinking he killed Virgil. Well, that's like a retcon of something.
I was about to say, that sounds like a retroactive thing to explain like an inconsistency in his personality.
Dante is a much more nuanced person. I especially enjoyed the whole thing about Nero, name-dropping Nero, and, talking about him in the context of Dante's story and how his existence made Dante's life a little better was pretty nice.
Yeah, that was very nice, yeah.
Clive's analysis shows me that the team was as passionate about this matchup as fans who made and supported it. Like, obviously Joshua was gonna have the most relevance in the analysis. Like, I really like how they go over like his journey of self-hatred and his therapeutic battle with his inner darkness. I enjoyed the bit of world building on Final Fantasy XVI's world. The team loved the matchup, the characters, they loved talking about them. Really feel the passion in every single aspect of the episode.
I would definitely agree, and that's really nice to see. I was also really happy, that they focused a lot on who these characters were as people. They honestly did that more than I was expecting, because I feel like a lot of people don't really like looking at these characters as characters, especially in like a versus sense. They just like seeing how strong the character is. Maybe that goes more so for casuals than hardcore fans, but
I've seen that a lot with Dante. A lot of people talk about how flamboyant he is, how funny he is, but like what I've said, a lot of people really don't go into the fact that he's like really depressed deep down, the fact that he's like half human, half demon. He's struggling to accept himself. He has a lot of family issues and a lot of other things. I'm so glad the episode touched on that rather than just the flamboyant side.
For sure, yeah. I guess I shouldn't say like all of his personality people don't care about, but like there's definitely more nuance to Dante than a lot of people give him credit for. I'm sure the same goes for Clive as well. But these are the kinds of video game characters where a lot of people just seem to focus on like this is how strong my favorite character is, and like I'm just so happy that like Deathbattle took the extra time to focus on their relationships, because that's really what pushes their stories forward a lot of the time. So that's obviously really important. So, thank God they took the extra time to do all of that.
I thought they got very good the longer they went on. They started off kind of, for me, a bit weak, but I think they got better as they went on. And by the end, of course, the way they tied the series names in at the end was pretty sweet, but made me smile.
What didn't you like about the beginnings, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't know, they just started off a bit slow. I think it's more an issue on Clive's side because they didn't really bother to mention Sid, who plays a pretty big part in Clive's story and the reason as to why he went after the gems. I mean, hell, through Sid, I don't think Clive would have came into contact with Ultima because of their past intertwining with the gem hunting. So they kind of just relegated him to being like, oh, he has Ramu.
Okay, I see. I guess you can't fit every single story element in, but, some might seem pretty important to bring up.
Good analysis for both. I definitely think they should have talked about Dante's struggle a bit more, especially given his relationship with Sparta.
I can see that. Personally, I'm happy with what we got, that we even got what we got, but I can understand wanting a little more too, yeah.
Yeah, it always feels nice to have more. And then, yeah, they brought it back with talking about Nero and how Dante has a family to look out for. I will say the way they did go about how Joshua came back was a bit funny, where they're just like, he's back.
Surprise! Yeah, yeah. I noticed that too. Yeah, there are definitely some parts of some Deathbattle scripts where, based on how the wording is, it's almost like they wrote a little section for this, but then they cut it for time, and they had to just replace it with like, oh, look at that, or something like that, where they have to find a way to like cut away from it very quickly. I wouldn't be surprised if that was similar, where it's like maybe they talked a little bit more about Joshua's return, but then they cut it for time, and it was just like, oh yeah, that's cool, moving on. Maybe. Who knows? I don't work for Deathbattle.
I already knew something about Joshua coming back was going to happen from the way that the DB team said, oh, he was presumed dead. I was like, he's not dead, isn't he?
Well, of course, yeah. Yeah. No.
The moment I heard the literal second I heard, I was like, yep, he's not dead. I know he's coming back.
Like, imagine if Luffy's analysis, they were like, oh yeah, an ace was presumed dead. And then, but he stays dead. Like imagine if they did that. That'd be the dumbest thing ever. Of course, if you say presumed dead, it means they're not actually dead. But yeah, as far as my opinions on this, I actually thought the analyses were structured very well. At least, like, contained to the content that they did decide to talk about, because you can always be like, oh, I wanted them to bring up this, and like, sure, I might feel that way for some things as well, but at least for what they talked about, I think it was structured quite well, because the way that they basically did it was like, they went through the characters' stories, and they brought up the abilities, like, that they gained as they went on through their stories. Like, they talked about all the necessary context for Clive, for instance, before they talked about him absorbing the icons and getting powers that way. So, like, I think just the pacing of the analyses was really good, especially on Clive's part, honestly, because with Dante, I think it was a little clunkier just because there are parts where, like, you have to talk about so many weapons all at once for it to, like, make sense, and then you can kind of move on with the story. But with, for both of them, though, I thought they did a really good job of spacing out, like, the story elements, and then the character elements, and then the abilities, and they didn't really give any, like, upper limits, like, hard upper limits to either of these characters' power, which usually I would kind of complain about, because I'd be like, well, the point of a death battle is to, like, try to analyze the characters as accurately as possible, but these are two characters where you can't really get a hard number for either of them. All you can get is like, oh yeah, they should be far in excess of a single universe, but then from that point onward, you're basically just hypothesizing or speculating, so I don't really mind this time, especially when, they could be so similar in power that, just leaving it at that, I think it's okay. I love to see them talking about, like, data books and lore. Obviously, I love to see that. The black boxes, I think, overall were used pretty well. They didn't, quote-unquote, hide too many major points, at least in the analyses themselves. And I think, aside from them spoiling everything, because that sometimes they just have to do that, I think this would otherwise make for, like, a really, really good introduction to either series. Like, and this is coming from a guy who, like, got more into the Devil May Cry franchise from Dante versus Bayonetta. But, like, if I didn't know anything about Dante going into this, I think I would be really interested in that series even from this episode, and same with, Clive and Final Fantasy 16. And this is an episode where I have to admit, like, as much as I say, like, I treat analyses and animation like as equals when judging an episode, this is one where I was definitely way more excited for the animation, like going into it. I am happy to say that the analyses, they did get me really invested in these characters as characters, even more than I already was. So I'm really happy to have seen all that. But now we can move on to the outcome and the reasoning. So specifically the verdict and why they came to their verdict. Like, do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think there were things they should have talked about more? All of that stuff.
I do feel that the verdict could have been expanded on. The endurance thing could have used a bit more explanation, because as some people pointed out, Dante has had better endurance feats than just 6 minutes, and the way the episode phrased it, it sound like he could only fight initial transformations for 6 minutes. And a lot of people are gonna like gloss over the fact that they specified that Dante's stamina isn't the best fighting someone who is his exact equal, because obviously the guy can fight longer than a couple of minutes, but when he's fighting someone like, say, Virgil, the dude got so exhausted in like a matter of minutes that dead weight bitch slapped the two of them in a submission. A lot of people missing the fact that they're talking about their transformations and they weren't talking about general stamina, because if they were talking about general stamina, then both could arguably go for hours and Dante could arguably go on for longer than that. But stamina wasn't exactly the name of the game here. It was more so Dante overpowered Clive before Clive got too strong with Logos and his willpower. I think either was just as likely, considering that, again, this whole fight was basically a coin flip. But yeah, like, I agree, verdict, like, this fight was gonna be close regardless, you know, and no real problem with agreeing or disagreeing with a coin flip. I just think they could have worded it a little bit better than they did.
Sure, yeah. I will say that I think that people who are like, oh, well, they didn't really pick up on the fact that they were focusing a lot on the super forms, I think that's on the audience. Like, it's not like Deathbattle didn't make that clear. In my opinion, they made that very clear that they were talking a lot about the super forms. I'm not going to say too much about what I think about the outcome just yet. I'll save that for the ending. But I do agree that there are some things maybe they could have worded a little better, some other things maybe they could have brought up, things they could have expanded upon. Maybe they could have focused more on like regular stamina, like outside of the super form. Maybe they could have done that, but like, to me it was very obvious that they were indeed shifting focus to the super forms. And anyone who didn't pick up on that, I think they just weren't really paying attention, but that's just me.
The moment Dante fell in the animation, I knew that everybody was going to hate it. Unfortunately.
Okay.
Overall, I've always thought about it back and forth, and I do agree with the outcome, but like Rez said, they could have done things a bit better, maybe expanded on things. I do think the stats category was kind of because of the speed thing, where they just kind of say, oh, Dante could go faster, but
so
Clive
could Clive in a way.
But it's like, at that point, you might as well make them two separate categories of strength and speed.
I feel like it was like close enough, because like both could like boost themselves in a way. Like, yeah, sure, like they didn't give Clive a precise measurement of boosting his speed, but considering that it was like a dodge mechanic, like I think it like kind of balances out in a way.
I guess.
And the speed gap wasn't exactly that big anyway, so
I could see the argument for them separating the categories, but when it was a tie anyway, I can understand maybe not wanting, or a tie in their eyes at least. I can understand maybe not wanting to separate them into two categories just for both of them to be a tie, and especially like the way it worked in the script, like it more so allowed them to easily shift from power to speed. Overall, like, just streamline things, move things as quickly as possible. I can understand them putting stats together, especially since they put stats together in a lot of episodes these days. They really only separate them if there's like big things to talk about for each one, or if one character has strength and the other character has speed. Otherwise, they do tend to put them together a lot of the time.
With endurance, I feel like a lot of people did misunderstand what they were trying to say with it, because I think people, like, yeah, they took it for stamina and stuff like that, but I think what they misunderstood is, I think they were talking about Sin Devil Trigger and the effects that has, since it basically eats up demonic energy, which could fuck Dante if Clive, say, goes Ifrit Risen and he's still in Devil Trigger, or possibly out of Devil Trigger, because they bring up in a black box that Devil Trigger theoretically could last longer than 6 minutes.
Yes.
It's just with Spin Devil Trigger and Devil Trigger in general, it just eats demonic energy, which Dante needs on the regular. And they brought stuff like Judgment, which would just end the supply chain, which would doom him. But one thing that I feel like needs to go without saying is a lot of people weren't really interested in hearing them out to begin with because of the fact that Dante lost. When you get down to it, Clive is infinitely less popular than Dante. He is the Who of this video.
I mean, the same thing happened with, like, Blade versus Buffy, where, like, after Buffy won, like, I saw a lot of people complaining about, like, oh, how Blade should have won, and a lot of the arguments they were saying for why Blade should have won, like, it wasn't even trying to rebut what Deathbattle was saying. It was very clear that they didn't really hear Deathbattle out, because the arguments they were making were, like, addressed in the episode, and, you know, they were argued again. Like, it was very clear that they just saw that Blade had lost and got mad. And it feels like something similar is happening here, just because, again, one character is so much more popular than the other, and they went in with an expectation that maybe they shouldn't have had.
But yeah, the internet did not take Dante Clive very lightly. I feel like a lot of people consider it to be one of the top 10 wrong quotation marks around it death battles.
Even though in reality it's one of, like, the closest battles you could find from characters that are from two separate worlds. Like, it's crazy.
And yet people still deny it.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree with why Clive won. I personally have Dante winning, but I do understand the reasoning. The community reaction, specifically the people saying it's wrong, is like a complete prime example of why I don't really like the Devil May Cry fanbase. From everything I've heard about them, the Devil May Cry fanbase seem really gatekeepy from what I can tell. This fanbase will judge you for starting with Devil May Cry 5, which, like, okay, yeah, starting with Devil May Cry 5 is, I suppose, is a pretty strange choice. I mean, it's the 5th entry in the series. You should probably start with 1 in that case. But, like, it doesn't really matter what you start with, as long as you understand the characters and you pick up more of the games as a result. It shouldn't really matter what you start with.
I never really understood, like the criticism of starting with, like, the most recent game. Like, depending on the console you have, that might just be the easiest thing for you to do. But it's also like, yeah, it's the most recent thing. It's the easiest to get your hands on, you know, with the best graphics most likely out of everything. Like, I never really understood that criticism, because some people don't have the opportunity or the money to buy, like, every single one of the games. Like, just let people play whatever game is easiest for them to play. Like, come on now.
Also, why are we gatekeeping single-player games? It's single-player. Let me do what the fuck I want. I'm lonely in my life.
This is the wrong game to gatekeep. You should be gatekeeping other stuff.
DMC 5 especially is, like, the most, like, beginner-friendly, I would say, in terms of DMC games. Compared to, say, like, DMC 3, where I would call that game complicated as shit to understand.
For a lot of people, like, especially younger players, not everyone is going to have easy access to an old school console. This specific circle of the community, because every community has its good and bad apples. And these people are going to be, like, what, bullying a random kid for not starting with Devil May Cry 1?
And the biggest problem with all of this is, like, what power do you actually hold over anyone over the internet? Like, people can literally just leave the community or close their laptop, close their computer or whatever. Like, it's not like you can force them to go buy another game. Like, is this really what you want to be spending your energy on? Like, telling people that they're playing the wrong game? Like, they don't have to listen to you, buddy. Go do something else. For a lot of stuff in the conclusion, I do actually agree with it. Like, I would say that under a number of interpretations, they probably do have similar stats and a lot of similar abilities or counters to those abilities. I do believe that Dante's healing is better. That is something that Deathbattle themselves said, but I do also believe that it can be worn down or overcome just based on the evidence that we've seen over the course of the Devil May Cry series, like by a force that's powerful enough, right? So I agree with all of that. There are some facts that seem a little bit shaky. Like Red said earlier, I'm not 100% sure about the super form durations, at least as the way that they explained it. And I really do think that is the main deciding factor for Clive's victory. Because if the super forms can run at around the same time, then I do kind of feel like, well, in their base form, Dante might have a bit of an edge, whether you're going like for a bit of a speed angle or the healing angle, because I feel like the stamina in their base forms, you could make a big argument that Dante is better there. If Clive does indeed have a way of like outlasting Dante's super form every single time, or most of the time, then I would agree that Clive would probably win. But if it's so easy to debunk that, then I think it really puts it more up in the air. And so I don't really have a very solid opinion on like who I think wins, because I think it does kind of come down to that. But I think that if you are making the argument that regardless of the exact time limit of the super forms, or, you know, the power limit or whatever, if we are trying to say that Clive would more often than not drain Dante's power to the point where he would turn back first, then yes, I would agree that Clive would probably come out on top there. There are definitely some things I think they should have brought up, like especially some things in the black box. As much as I praised the black boxes in the analyses, like Nemesis said, there was this section about how like how Devil Trigger could go on longer than 6 minutes, but Sin Devil Trigger drains things faster, and there are ways to just turn him back immediately. Like, I think those are things that probably should have been said out loud, especially since like this is going to be a really hard pill for a lot of people to swallow, that Clive's super form and outlasting Dante's super form, the power discrepancy could be so big that it could just overcome the healing basically right away. Like, that's a tough pill for people to swallow. Not as bad as, say, like Omni-Man versus Bardock, but I think that this is something where it was very clear to me, like, they needed to go into more detail verbally, because it's just going to be hard for some people to accept.
Reminder, kids, YouTubers shouldn't versus debate unless they're all versus debating YouTube channels.
I suppose that's the way to look at it, yeah. It's okay to have an opinion on things, but you also have to accept that there are going to be some people that might have more information than you, and you might not want to make such massive claims if you know for a fact you don't have all the information that you could have. You know, like, I think some people need to remind themselves of that.
Don't make Clive fans know nothing about Clive. They should not have a certain matter about this being right or wrong.
Exactly.
Like I said earlier, the main argument wasn't, I feel like it wasn't necessarily whose super form lasted longer. More so, could Dante end the fight before Clive gets stronger? Because logos makes him stronger as the fight goes on. So even if you argued that Dante's stamina was league better than Clive, lasting Clive wasn't really the issue. It was stopping Clive before he became a problem.
I can see that, yeah, because if you're saying that, yeah, that Clive can get stronger more consistently as the fight goes on, whereas Dante can get stronger with his super forms, but he's still going to be draining that energy, then yeah, it could get to a point where it's just going to tip further and further and further into Clive's favor. So I can definitely see that as well. Regardless of super form durations, that would definitely play a factor, yeah.
Dante would need to beat Clive fast enough in order for it to matter, but given the stats are pretty much dead even, he wouldn't.
I mean, yeah, if you really think about it, if Dante is out of demonic energy juice and he's just tired, Clive can always just go into limit break, or I guess his devil trigger, and just end the fight.
So yeah, that's basically all I got to say about Dante versus Clive. I think we can all agree that we enjoyed it immensely, even if there are some nitpicks here and there. But as far as the next time, the 2025 finale, definitely wasn't expecting this one. Ash Ketchum versus Yugi Moto. Nemesis, we'll start with you. Are you excited for Ash versus Yugi, Pokemon versus Yu-Gi-Oh?
What do you think?
I think you're probably excited.
I have a lot of connection to these two, mostly Yugi, since I grew up on Yu-Gi-Oh!
I see.
And it's amazing 4 kids finger gun dub.
The Shadow Realm.
Yeah.
Shadow Realm.
Gotta love it.
I love it. It's cool. It's hype. I can't wait.
You know, I'm seeing so many people that are like, you know, oh yeah, Pokemon was my childhood, Yu-Gi-Oh was my childhood, or both of them were my childhood. It's like, dude, like fucking Bakugan was my childhood, Chaotic was my childhood, you know, just some examples. Like, I like these series, but I didn't really grow up on them like other people did, but I'm happy that for so many people, this is basically their childhood as a death battle. So I'm happy that so many people are so excited for that. Ethan, what do you think? Are you excited?
Part of me is and part of me isn't. I've said it before on my own content, but I'm not really the biggest fan of Ash versus Yugi. I'm not really the biggest fan of its dynamic, mainly because of Yugi's trap cards. I don't really think that will, like, bode well against Ash's Pokemon. But, like, at the same time, it's a Pokemon nerd, so I'm gonna nerd about the episode regardless. I love Pokemon. Okay, the main thing I want to see though is Crocodile. Please, Deathbattle, just let my goat in. I've been playing Pokemon CA recently, and when I got my Crocodile, I was so ecstatic. I love Crocodile so much. I really wish Ash had a better Gen 5 team. Oh my god, he had a shit run.
The problem I think is that like every single person is kind of like expecting, or not expecting, but like really hoping for like a different Pokemon, to the point where like you can only satisfy everyone if you bring in like every single Pokemon. So there are definitely going to be some people that are a little disappointed, like, oh, my favorite Pokemon didn't get in. But
my favorite
I'm hopeful.
Pokemon of Ash just didn't come in.
Yeah.
Why didn't they bring in fucking Torkoal Pokemon?
I'm excited for the episode itself, not necessarily the matchup, because I never understood Ash versus Yugi. Like, obviously, like, Pokemon was like a big part of my childhood, like so many people. Like, I got on the show around the Diamond and Pearl season, big connection to that. I didn't really get into Yu-Gi-Oh! Until, like I had cards, but I never really watched the show or played the game. And it wasn't until Excel that I started getting properly into Yu-Gi-Oh! So, growing up with mostly, like, non-Yu-Gi-Oh! Things, like, the trilogy of my childhood was Pokemon, Bakugan, and Beyblade.
Yeah.
Like, I never understood quote-unquote rivalry between Ash and Yugi. Like, I always figured that if Pokemon had a rivalry with anyone, it was Digimon, and we kind of got that settled.
Yeah.
Brutally. I feel like as a general idea and the unquote legacy behind it, Ash vs. Yugi feels a bit overhyped, but I am, like, a little bit interested. Because while this matchup doesn't mean a lot, if anything, to me specifically, I know that there are so many people out there in the community and in general who this matchup means a lot to. I do hope they do a Goku versus Superman and stuff like, hey, these characters debuted in this year. I want them to kind of emphasize what these characters meant for a lot of people, because I do want them to acknowledge that these characters have stood the test of time for like almost 30 years, if not straight up 30 for so many people. Like, generations were like inspired by these guys in some shape or form for a matchup of this supposed magnitude. I think it deserves at least some degree of grandiose.
I definitely think this has the potential to be like one of the craziest events that we've gotten in independent death battle, just in general, just for how much stuff is going on here. I'm very happy it didn't get pushed back to 2026. I definitely didn't think it would, just based on it originally being episode 200. I'm like, there's no way they're gonna push it this far back then if they promised 200 and then it's not 200. But this does make a lot of sense to make it like the 2025 finale. And that means next year we have Aang versus Traveler, Gru versus Megamind, probably Light versus Columbo, unless they fit it in at the end of December, but they're probably not going to if they're saying this is the 2025 finale, but who knows. I'm really excited to see how they cap off 2025, because it's been a crazy year. I do think also with Ash versus Yugi, like, I don't want to jinx anything, but like, I think this has the potential as far as quality to be like a Bowser versus Eggman level event, just for how much stuff is going on. Like, I think it could really deliver on that. And it's also one of those matchups where it's like, yeah, some people may not love the dynamic, some people may not really get it or whatever, but like, it's one of those comparisons that just kind of like transcends versus debating. So it's like, if you're a show dedicated to answering the biggest versus matches, I just don't understand how you can do anything else. Like, even if there are some weird things to figure out, you're eventually going to end up doing this one. So to me, it's nice to see, even if they're not really my childhood franchises. I hope everyone listening is excited and everyone enjoyed Dante versus Clive as much as they could have. Of course, leave your own opinions about any of this down in the comments below. And like I said, we have tons of other podcast episodes for all the Death Battle episodes, basically back to Omni-Man versus Bardock and Joker versus Giorno. So if you want to take a listen to any of those, I'd appreciate that a lot. Thank you, of course, to all the guests here. We could not do this without you, so I appreciate it a ton. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, comment your comment, subscribe if you could too. But no matter what, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. And yeah, that's it for me, and that is a wrap. Have a good night, everybody.
He said the thing, Chad.
He said the funny!
He said the funny thing.
This makes the devils cry!
And it was its Final Fantasy.
I hate all of you.